Our next company presenting this evening is TZ Limited. TZ Limited's smart devices and smart systems provide solutions including the automated delivery asset management locker system for online shoppers. Chairman Mark Bouris will present tonight for TZ Limited. Please welcome Mark.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I think first and foremost is to give you some context what I'm doing with this company. Most of you know me to be involved in other businesses. This is a good opportunity for me to introduce TZ Limited to you. TZ Limited is a technology business. I think that's the first and foremost thing to understand. We tend to get looked at as an industrial company. We are not. First thing. The second thing is, in terms of our overall strategy, I was installed along with our current board, at least one other member of our current board, we're installed to take control of the direction of this company in June 2009, exactly about 4 years ago this month, as a result of some issues the company had. And we were installed there by our largest shareholder and the convertible note holder at a particular time, which is a company called QVT, which is a big hedge fund out of New York. And our task at that point was to do a number of things. The first task was to give a report back to the hedge fund as to any irregularities that had happened in relation to business, which we've done. The second thing was to make a recommendation to the hedge fund as to the technology of this business. Now, I'm a finance guy, but as obviously you've got to put numbers around these things. The future of this company in terms of its technology, and what were the potential commercialisation opportunities for TZ. Actually, it's 1 week ago that the founder of this business, the founder of the brains behind this business, the guy actually come up with the concepts that sit behind the technology, actually passed away, in fact, from cancer. So tonight and following after Novagen is in some respects quite important to me, because one of the things I undertook when I heard he died last Tuesday of cancer or from cancer, that no matter what happens as far as I'm concerned, then I'm going to make sure that this business works. So I would like to first of all to introduce to you what actually our core technology is. So up here you'll see on the screen here, that is a lock. Nothing particularly special about a lock, other than this lock has a lot of special features. Locks are ubiquitous, as you know. Locks appear in everything that opens and closes: doors, cabinets, drawers, locks, security systems, houses, aeroplanes, anything that opens and closes has a requirement for a lock. So if I'm trying to get into as many places as I possibly can, a lock actually is a very good place to start, as would be a PowerPoint, but in our case it's a lock. So what our founder decided to do was try and find materials that allows you actually to build A, smaller locks, B, allows you to build locks that you could actually put at the back of a microprocessor or a circuit board, so you could actually take intelligence to that lock, right to that point of the lock. In other words, decentralized intelligence from a mainframe or decentralized intelligence from a computer right to the very lock, and allow you to do some sensing from that lock. So what he did was he was playing around with some compounds, which actually was a compound of titanium and nickel, and a particular molecular structure. He took that compound and he started to apply energy to it in the form of heat energy, and watched its response. And there's a small wire in that diagram there. I hope you can see it. It's a little bit of wire that goes around that grey bit. It's just a circular bit of wire. There's a number of other moving parts in there, but that bit of wire is what they call shape memory alloy. It is a particular piece of alloy that responds in a certain way to energy when it's applied to it. And what it actually does, instead of expanding as you would expect it to do, it contracts. And as it contracts, it pulls all the other pulleys within that lock and actually opens the lock, releases the lock. Now, what's interesting about this particular lock, that's called an actuation process, and that bit of actuation, that bit of wire, that small piece of wire, that small bit of compound is very, very cheap. We have built, or the company has built, algorithms that sit behind that lock on a circuit board. Now, normally you can't put a circuit board behind an actuator. An actuator would normally be something like a DC motor, or alternatively it'd be a solenoid. Solenoids and DC motors create electromagnetic fields. Electromagnetic fields interfere with data that would sit at the back of that circuit board. So you can't actually bring intelligence to the lock. Because we don't have electromagnetic field, we just have this bit of wire that contracts and opens and closes or actuates the lock itself. You can actually take intelligence right to the lock. It's very cheap, it's very light, it's very small, and as a result of having the intelligence at the lock, you can drive information into the lock and you can pull information out of the lock. In other words, you can have sensors within the lock, and you can actually open and close the lock remotely from anywhere, as long as you can have access to the internet. Now, our founder developed this many, many years ago, like 15 years ago, but of course what he had to wait for was for the smart devices to catch up, because this system only worked if you could actually use the internet through a mobile phone or through a smart device, an iPad or one of these things, and you can actually start to open and close these things electronically. As you know, smart devices and the use of SMS and the use of these smart devices has only really taken up popularity in the last 5 years. So this invention by Dickory Ruddock has only started to become more prevalent since this thing here has become more usable. Now, fortunately for me and the board, we only got appointed in 2009 when actually all these things started to converge. When they started to converge, one of the things we worked out was that two areas that you could actually try to build a commercialization prototype for the use of this lock, and two areas which were growing, were one, data centers. Obviously these things created cloud computing. As a result of cloud computing, a lot of data is kept in data centers, kept off site, and these things also created online shopping. And as a result of that, we decided to develop two applications. The new board, since 2009, decided to develop two applications. The company had never sold one application up to that point. Two applications being the locking, opening and closing, and the management of infrastructure, security infrastructure around data cabinets and data centers, which are growing at a phenomenal rate around the world. That's the first application. And the second application, which we decided to develop, was parcel delivery systems that have been introduced around the world, around the globe, in various stations, in order to deal with electronic delivery of parcels, and generally speaking, where things are bought online. So we have two applications. One of them is called Package Asset Delivery, PAD, and it's used, once again, it uses our unique smart device. We're the only company in the world that has this smart device. It is not generally used in the rest of the world. The three actuation systems are either DC motors, solenoid, or what we do. We're the only company that has this. We have all the patents that surround all the algorithms that sit behind opening and closing and actuating the SMA. And the second one is infrastructure protection systems, which is opening and closing data cabinets and data centers, and also managing the environment within the data cabinet and outside of the data cabinet. So there are two objectives. There are two strategies that we commenced in 2009. It took us literally 2 years to develop it, to get it beta tested, to get it accepted by the marketplace. Now I'm happy to say that in terms of infrastructure protection, data cabinets, in many cases we have become the standard. Our lock and our system that sits behind it, all the software and everything that it runs off, has become a standard. So many times when new data centers are being built and the data center owner, developers putting it out there for tender, they actually specify us in as the locks that need to be included on the cabinets themselves. And in relation to package asset delivery, once again, that's been a bit slower for us to build because it was a much more complicated process. But some of you you may have seen the Australia Post boxes that Delivery Systems Australia Post put in 2011 and 12. The first 10 were ours. We built them for them. We built the concept up for Australia Post. We proved the concept. We did not win the tender to deploy the balance of the ones for Australia Post. It actually we were not the tenderer. Someone else tendered because we're too small a company to be on the Australian government tender list. Another company won that tender, but since then we won the Singapore Post tender. So there are two platforms, there are two applications. What I should be careful of is to explain this to you. As a technology company, what we do is this. We develop the technology off the back of our basic technology, our fundamental technology. We develop the application. We prove the concept up for the application. So we prove that infrastructure protection works We do it by improving our network, getting people to test it and trial it in significant places. And I'm talking about US government significant places, those big places like that, banks and US government. And or on the package asset delivery, we do with Australia Post. We prove the concept up. We maintain our technology and all the patents that sit behind it. We then take that technology once it's been commercialised and we do one of three things. We look for a liquidity event. So we either list that separately as an entity that can become an industrial company in relation to that particular application. One, we do that, or we sell it to someone who may want to buy it, or alternatively, we vend it into a joint venture with somebody else who has, say, an e-commerce business that may want to own a package asset delivery system. For example, Google recently bought a similar system to ours, not on the same technology, but a package asset delivery system from a company in the United States because Google wants to vertically integrate in the e-commerce environment. Amazon has recently started to establish their own package asset delivery systems because they want to have control of the vertical that relates to when they sell something online, they want to have the ability to control the delivery and actually put it into the delivery systems around the country in America. Amazon's got something like currently six outlets where they actually deliver books when you buy stuff on Amazon online. So an obvious environment for us would be to look for somebody who's an e-commerce operator who needs to own a delivery system and who needs to control the vertical, because when it comes to online purchasing, the most important thing is fulfillment. Fulfillment is not about actually going on the computer and buying the thing online. Fulfillment is actually getting it in your hands. And getting it in your hands today is a big issue, and because, generally speaking, we're not home, we get carded by whoever the delivery organisations, we have to wait to pick the thing up at another date. So our game, as I said, is to build applications, and then is to find the liquidity event as a technology company, to find a liquidity event that suits that particular application. So, package asset delivery solutions. So here's an example of what it would look like if you bought something online. We have an e-commerce company who has a courier company who can deliver to, say, for example, to Australia Post when we install for Australia Post, or for example in Singapore and Singapore Post. That our system will tell the person, the consumer, it tells the consumer today that you've received something and here's your code. And it comes in either by way of SMS or by email to the registered user of the system. So in Singapore, what happens for the POP stations, what happens is that if you're not home when the delivery is being made by Singapore Post for something you bought online, Singapore Post simply delivers into one of their POP stations, which we install, which we build for them, we sell to them, and that's the message you'll get. You'll go up to it 24 hours, 365 days of the year, 24/7. They're generally speaking outdoor facilities. You walk up, a light comes on because it senses you're there. You go up to the system, and I'm going to demonstrate a little bit later, or Nick is, and you just basically code in the number, and it selects the locker that your stuff's in, and there is a complete audit trail that is left for the courier company, the e-commerce vendor, and you. So package asset delivery solutions are a way of the future, particularly when you'll see a bit later on how important online, or how fast growing the online industry is. So here's our four commercial applications. So we have a corporate application. So in the United States, we have clients like Cisco, Amazon, Microsoft. We supply in the US, we supply their delivery systems in their campuses. We build them for them, we install them for them, they manage them after that. We supply those systems for them in campus, in other words, in an office environment. The second one is residential. So we have built in US of A, in Chicago, we have supplied a big apartment building. That was our very first installation, a mail delivery system, which includes packages, that takes place of the concierge. In Australia and in Singapore, most particularly in Singapore, we have our postal solutions where we actually go to postal organisations and tender on their postal solutions. So right now I think we've got something like 5 tenders out there with postal organisations around our region outside of Australia. We won the Singapore Post one, where their first trial was five outlets, but we built 5 systems. That was all networked. We went through the trial process. It was approved and commissioned. They made a reorder of 10 about 3 weeks ago, which is a very significant. We announced it at the ASX. It's a very significant thing because to get someone like Singapore Post, who's probably a leader in the world in terms of technology, in this type of technology, we beat every other technology organisation in the world to get the reorder actually underpin the fact that they were commissioned. And that means that the whole system's now networked. We built right into their IT system. Our software guys built right into their IT system. So it's not something they're going to go back and say, oh, look, we changed one, we're going to go with somebody else, because it's too complicated a process to unwind everything. So our system is as good as anyone's in the world, and we price as well as everybody else in the world. And the final one is our specialty one. That's one we've done for Coles. And that's being on trial now in, I think, 6 outlets for Coles around Australia. It's a coal locker system. Here's our participation system. So I've just talked about the Singapore Post one, where we do it for governments. The second one is where we actually have an agnostic system. Our first agnostic system has just been set up in the MLC Centre in Sydney, up the road here. We've done a deal with GPT. We're going to be rolling these out in 6 outlets throughout Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane over the next 3 weeks. They're all built. They're here in Australia, ready to install. We've installed one at the MLC. It's ready. It hasn't been deployed. It's just sitting up there in the food hall there. And they will all be interconnected, networked. That's one way you do it. And that way, unfortunately, we're taking on the incumbent parcel delivery organisation here in Australia. And I'm not allowed to say the name, but I think you all know who I'm talking about. As you can see, parcel delivery is just a massive opportunity around the world. And that's an example of what's happening in Germany at the moment. 18% of all parcel deliveries online, of the 870 million parcel deliveries in Germany at the moment, are going to what they call pack stations, or the sort of stations we're building here in Australia. The opportunity in our region is huge. By the way, we're the only entity in the world that is deployed in this region, other than InPost in Australia. Now I'm talking the region beyond Australia, so in other words, Asia. We're the only company in the world. It's a massive opportunity. Here are the parts to building it. We've taken the whole last 12 months to build this. So we've got the e-commerce retailers online, which we've done through a company called Tamanda. We've announced that. We have this shows you this pie chart here shows you who are the big logistics operators in this country. We have since signed up TNT, and we've signed up Fastway. Obviously, our competitor is Australia Post. And you've got to have retail. It's a retail game. You've got to have the outlets. So we've got shopping centres. We've done shopping centre agreements with GPT. We've done convenience stores agreements. We've done petrol stations agreements. So we are building a network. This is the revenue model. You can see here clearly, online retailers pay fee per transactions. Logistics providers pay fee per transactions, opening and closing. Property owners pay a once-off fee. There is a goods return fee from e-commerce companies, because they get a lot of goods returned. They need somewhere for them to be returned. And advertising and promotion, which our system allows for a lot of promotion and the push through of other advertising and other promotional materials through the medium, because we have a screen in there. And this is a photo which is only like 1 day old. This is the one we just installed up here in the MLC Centre, which is very exciting for us. Infrastructure protection, I'm going to have to quickly move through this, but I'll give you, this is what we've installed for Macquarie Telecom. Those little black squares with the red lights on them, they're on all the Macquarie Telecom, they're on all those Macquarie Telecom data cabinets. There's obviously data included in all those. Pretty significant. We can electronically open and close these cabinets, because our lock does not have any interference with data, which actually sits in these data columns. And any other type of system will interfere with data in there. And we're one of the few companies in the world that actually has this ability. This is an example of the opportunity when it comes to racks data racks being put in around the world. I mean, 2 million of these a year. If we can become an international standard, which we are currently the Australian standard for locking in these cabinets, 2 million racks a year, that's quite a significant business for us. We're not saying we're going to become the industrial company who's going to do this, but we would look to somebody who would want to joint venture with us and take our technology into that environment. A rack maker, for example, or a data cabinet maker around the world. I won't go into that. That just talks about who the other people who we are competing with at the moment. This is an example of our customer base for racks. NextDC, Interaction, Macquarie Telecom, Amazon, Vivo, MSC, all the names, IBM. We've installed in all these environments for the US government. We're a big installation in the United States of America for the US government. That took a long time to get that one approved.